Manjushi, Namo Sushi, Namo Damashi, So Ye Chudan Sugi Chunan Lai, Janju Bado Nani Jasuji, Dagi Chuni Kibe Sonangi, Dola Vinje Sangi Drupa Shu, Chunan Sugi Chunan Lai, Janju Bado Nani Jasuji, Dagi Chuni Kibe Sonangi, Dola Vinje Sangi Drupa Shu, Chunan Sugi Chunan Lai, Janju Bado Nani Jasuji, Dagi Chuni Kibe Sonangi, Dola Vinje Sangi Drupa Shu, Sashi Begi Chushi Medo Jam, Jali Shini De Kemadi, Sangi Shido Mede Waye, Jobinata Shina Juba Shu, Guru Rana Mendala Kandi Adaya Amen. So in brief, how nice it would be if all kind mother sentient beings were to have excellent happiness and the causes of excellent happiness that are virtues. May they have excellent happiness and its causes. I will cause them to have excellent happiness and its causes. Lama deity, please bless me to be able to do so. Next, we cultivate compassion towards all suffering mother sentient beings by thinking, how nice it would be if all mother sentient beings were free from all suffering and the causes of suffering. They are non-virtues. May they be free from all suffering and its causes. I will free them from all suffering and its causes. Lama deity, please bless me to be able to do so. Next, we generate bodhicitta. First, we ask ourselves, who should take the responsibility to free all mother sentient beings from the sufferings of samsara and of lower realms? I should take the responsibility. Even though I should take the responsibility, I do not have the ability to place them in the state of perfect, complete enlightenment now. Who has such ability? Those perfect, complete Buddhas have the abilities to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the precious state of enlightenment. Next, we meditate on emptiness for a short while. The self and the aggregates neither exist as inherently one nor as inherently different, thus is empty of inherent existence. Set a good motivation. For the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will achieve the state of enlightenment. For this, I will listen to the holy teaching and practice accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
当我是开始唱的地方都晓得，任务帮的多呢，电马他的电就多些，开始找的地方，qui est là
사실 대한 양결하게
quand des ça tu t'as bien dit
미다 소주로
das qui du jour t'as dit
So the outline is it follows that if arahantship were attained by the mere path of the 16, such as impermanence, it would also be attained by the mere abandonment of manifest afflictions. So continue from last class. So the verse under this outline is verse 45. The first two lines say, if due to having exhaustively abandoned the afflictions, they are freed, it follows that as soon as that happens, they become full destroyer.
Oh, that is that. That's chongama, chongama is that this the way you want the donor, the matter to say. That Dachamba, or you did Dachamba, Tobala, Tony Togo Maries, Tony Togo Marie, yeah, Karche Bongazana, Matas to do, to be the la, Bombi, Toji, then you must have a pound of this, you must have a pound of Dutchman, Jabba told the essay. That crazy day, what did it? Chongama Sugi, that's what did it. That is not that the Pallegio, that woman Pallegio. And we told you that you won't get some receipt of the Kanzade, Winji Pomba, Temato, the Dutch of the combat Tobanjo, that called Pam David, so what native. Check the being by Nara, and the Imana channel, then you won't get receipt on the Kanzade, Winji Pomba, Temato, the Dutch of the combat told the air, that called Dutch of the combat told the Togo, this is the part, learn a crown, the water, Dutch of the Togo. 토급이 전생 가르스나 저는 못다서 찌르기 란사 고비 네모시네 다좀바 토그레스 가자도 괜히 전생 넘바 근데 소그리 해서 전생 넘바 근데 소그리 했어 와 네모는 이제 레히자 완벽 가자데 왠지 pomba 대마서 다좀 막 토는 거고 와 되게 구야 전생 가르스나 저는 못다서 찌르기 란 고비 네모시네 다좀 막 토는 있어 나고도 와 괜히 전생 손으로 고비 괜히 찌바래 하세 내가 찌바래 해서 바로
So here is school or the previous site. So they say the realizations of emptiness is not necessary for the attainment of the state of full destroyer. Instead, by cultivating the path that realizes the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, the afflictions are abandoned exhaustively, whereby they are freed and attain the result of full destroyer. So those hearers school or so-called previous site, then they have this doubt saying that in order to attain the state of full destroyer, it is not necessary to attain the realizations of emptiness. By just cultivating the path that realizes the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, then the afflictions are abandoned exhaustively, then they are freed and attain the result of full destroyer. So this is the reason that Hero School stated that realizations of emptiness is not necessary for the attainment of the state of full destroyer. Then middle way proponent say to Hero School, so if that is the case, then it follows that as soon as the manifest afflictions have been abandoned by persons who abandon merely the manifest afflictions for the time being. So for the time being can also be translated as temporarily. So they become full destroyer because having exhausted the afflictions by cultivating the path of the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, the state of full destroyer is attained. So this is the response given by a middle way proponent to Hero School. So he says that if that is the case, then when manifest afflictions are abandoned by a person who abandoned merely the manifest afflictions temporarily, then they will become full destroyer. So they will become, would they become full destroyer by just abandon merely the manifest afflictions for the time being? And then in your situation, then you have to say yes, because having exhausted the afflictions by cultivating the path of the 16 attributes or the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, the state of full destroyer is attained. So the reason mentioned in middle way proponents' response is the same as the reason mentioned by the Hero School. So Hero School, they also say that by cultivating the path that realizes the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence, then the afflictions are abandoned exhaustively, then they are free to attain the full destroyer. So then middle way said to a Hero School, using the same reasoning. So having exhausted the afflictions by cultivating the path of 16 attributes of the Noble Truths, then the state of full destroyer is attained. So those two, referring to the reason given by middle way and also Hero School, are taken to be similar in every way. So next two lines of verse 45 says, although devoid of afflictions, the potencies of actions are seen in those. Then the commentary say, that cannot be asserted. So that cannot be asserted, and that refers to as soon as the manifest afflictions have been abandoned by persons who abandon merely the manifest afflictions for the time being, they become full destroyer. So this cannot be asserted. Yeah. So as soon as from here, then they become full destroyer. So this cannot be asserted because although lacking manifest afflictions temporarily, the potencies of actions that connect to future rebirths are seen in those persons who have abandoned merely the manifest afflictions. So even though the manifest afflictions are abandoned, although lacking manifest afflictions temporarily or for the time being, the potencies of actions that connect to future rebirths, it means that they are potencies of actions that could project aggregates of future rebirths. So, and these projections of future aggregates are seen in those persons who have abandoned merely the manifest afflictions. So, and these can also be seen in scriptures and also a reasoning that those who lack manifest afflictions temporarily, the potencies of actions are able to connect to future rebirths or are able to project future aggregates. And so it means that although it means that lacking manifest afflictions temporarily, then they are not, those who lack manifest afflictions temporarily are not able to, have not yet attained the result of bow destroyer, have not yet attained the result of arhat. So because if whoever has attained the result of arhat, then there will be in whose continuum karma and afflictions that projects future rebirths will be absent. So the karma and afflictions will be absent in those who have attained the result of full destroyer. So therefore, they will not. Those potencies of actions are not able to project a future rebirths. So in the first lines of verse 45, it says, if due to having exhaustively abandoned the afflictions, that they are free. So then we have to identify the afflictions here. What does it refers to? So, yeah. So, previous side, those hero school, their assertions is by cultivating the path of the 16, such as impermanence, or the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, such as impermanence. By cultivating this path, afflictions will be abandoned, and the state of full destroyer will be attained. This is the assertions of hero school. Then now we have to identify afflictions here, because it mentions in the first line, it says, if due to having exhaustively abandoned the afflictions, then they are free. So the afflictions here refers to the conceptions or the conceptual thoughts that apprehends a person as being self-sufficient, substantially existent. So here, the afflictions are abandoned, and these afflictions refers to the conception or the conceptual thought that apprehends persons as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, together with cravings, attachments, and so forth that are induced by this conception. So the afflictions here refers to the conception that apprehends persons as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, together with craving, attachments, and so forth that are induced by it. So that is what afflictions here refers to. And these afflictions, in brief, is the afflictions that are mentioned in the two Abhidhamma. So the treasury of Abhidhamma, or the treasury of knowledge, and also and the compendium of knowledge. So afflictions here refers to the afflictions that are mentioned in the two Abhidhamma, treasury, and also the compendium of knowledge. So, and these conceptions that apprehends persons as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, is asserted by the Svadantika Madhyamika and the school below it. So they assert these conceptions that apprehends persons as being self-sufficient, substantially substantially existent as the apprehensions of a self of a person. And in their system, they also assert that by cultivating the rangyu na di kansa rangga tu be yuki tongba sa de tongba ni ro kansa dame ro kansa ki dangzin na kansa ki dame de yeah. So, and then by cultivating the selflessness of a person, which is the emptiness of person as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, and by cultivating this emptiness, that serves as a direct antidote to the self-graspings of person. So, yeah. So, if due to having exhaustively abandoned the afflictions, they are freed. So, what afflictions are abandoned here? Are abandoned by the path, by the cultivated path of the 16, such as impermanence, is the manifest afflictions. Manifest afflictions are abandoned by this path. So, in other words, this path, the path of the 16, or the path of the 16, such as impermanence, then they are able to suppress these manifest afflictions. So, however, this path cannot abandon the seed of it, cannot abandon its seed. So why do we say that this path cannot abandon the seeds? Is because then this is just like the meditative absorption of perceptionless or non-discrimination, the meditative absorptions of perceptionless or non-discrimination, the meditative absorptions of non-discrimination. So because when one is in this state of meditative absorption, those feelings and discriminations, they are not able to manifest. So those feelings, when one is in these meditative absorptions of perceptionless or non-discrimination, then those feelings and discriminations are not able to manifest. And when one arises from this state of meditation, then these feelings and discriminations, then they will manifest again. So why would they manifest again? Is because the seeds have not yet been abandoned.
다들 한국어 제고 당하 들어와. 다 간다. 대주 마다도 주도 공부 란지. 다 넘바니 얘기 마다 주도 공부 란지. 다 넘바니 시비 내문문주 잡고 그래야 사베 자원이나 공부 말에 다 들어와. 디시자. 다 대마저 가서 단주랑 그러다. 요와. 다 단주랑라 대주 넘바니 시비 들어와. 얘기 마다 주도 공부 란지. 넘바니 시비 내문문주 잡고 그러면 사베 공부 말에 다 가서 단주랑 그러다. 다 가서 타도 खे 단주로 와. 단주와 다 단주와라 근데 사베 뽕머니 뽕이고 말에 년반이 시비니 문제자 뽕이 그래 사베 때니 뽕 두고 말에 대마세 가서 덴지 내지도 나도 단주하게 덴지 덴지 주자고 와 덴지 덴반지 덴지와 덴지 내지라 자고 덴지 내지도 시비니 무대 사베 뽕머니 바 마제서 또 엄마 단주라 덴지 내지도 시비니 무 사베 뽕머니 바 마제 너무 문제자 뽕 두고 말에 당하서 덴지 내지 시고로 와 덴지 내지 시비 되리 너무 되게 뭔지 좀 보고 말했어. 그러니까 이게 뭐다 주고 나한테다. 에 공부도제 덴지 내지 시비 너무 와 덴지 내지 시비 너무게 사베 보면이 봐 마세.
덴지 윤지
내지 시비. 제베 맞 단주라 덴지 내지 시고로 와. 덴지 내지 시고로 와. 다 덴지 내지 시비 너무 저게 사베 보면이 봐 마세. 뭔지 좀 보고 말했어. 되게 뭐다 주고 나한테 와 사베 공부도 사베 공부니 봐 마세 덴지 스타 근데 덴지 사베 공부니 봐 마세 와 공부니 봐 마세 덴지 능지 잡고 말했어 보통 말다 단지로 되다 아마도 단단히 제가 시시보다 원반이 내시게 너무 능지도 보통 그래 마도 나도 단지로라 다 간다 덴지 내지도 시비 덴지 능지 장에 보통 말했어 사베 공부니 봐 마세 덴지 능지 잡고
능기와 뽕투기를 했을 때 수위도 줄에.
당고 뭐 먼저 공화다고 뭐 그런 요거를 단주에 내가 캐리고 단주가 캐리고 봐. 먼저다 보면 캐리고 이나 먼저다 보는 거냐 봐서 와다데 맞아. 힘이 노노도 넘어 샤바 나시리에서 와. 어디나시 해서고.
이네 단다 땡큐웨 로라. 이네 대한 사변 대한 뽕 미누바 마시 이네 덴징 응규 점 양뽕 투 말이지.
덴지 먼저 자 보통 말이지. 맞아. 덴지 내지 누구로 와. 단주라. 덴지 먼저 자 보통 말이지. 다 단단 거 거기 노마트 뭐다서 주도급에 좋아다지고 되고 토그레 너무 뽕그레에서 고쳐 누구로 와.
영문경교 뽕이.
너무 뽕에서 다 단주가 봐. 단다시는 뭐만이네 기분 너무 먼저 자 봐. 일단 단다시고.
영문경교와 대뽕투기요. 뉴디 대뽕투기요 말이지. 영문경교와
뭐만이네 기분 너무 먼저 대뽕서 요래세. 먼저 다 뽕서 요래만. 이 사비야 뽕도 뭐만이네 기분 너무 사비야 뽕도 말이지.
덴징기 사변.
어디라다.
대한 총아마기 대한민국 영문경교와 뽕투기를 했 권는 바데 이랑 총아마 당 오마 반니가 대한 켈랭교로 이네 대땡
그 영문공부에서 오라. 영문공부는 되게 뭐다 주고 그래.
이네 대
오마 와다주면 되고 토그에서 프랑스 들어오라. 영문공부에 와다주면 되고 토그에서 오라. 다주면 그만 토그에서. 다 단주하게 대 말에. 대 말에. 이 뽕에서 왔잖아. 영반이 지금 영문경교 뽕 된다 데려야지. 와. 먼저 잡고 막 이제 시고를 마도 너무 가와가고 벤지니 너무 먼저 잡고 막 벤지 너무 먼저 잡고 막 사베 보면 뭐 맞은 먼저 잡고 그래서 와 다주면 내부터나 너무 사베 빵으로 와
뉴디 사베는 다 뉴디 연구 와양 뽕투요 말로
뽕이야 내가 다 단줄로 드시고 다 뽕투 말이었어 나단다 뽕서 된다 들 받자다 너만이 내시도 너무 먼저 잡고 말이었어 다 들어봐자 뭐 다주면 내부터 하고 요 말. 당연반이 시도 다정만 인구 말은 맞아 단지라 당연반이 시도 그런 다정만 맞아 다정만 인구 해야 말
당연반이 시비
다정만 인구 말해서
당연반이 시비 다정바
다정만 인구 말해서 단지라 다정만 인구 말해서 그다 밀려는 말은 아무튼
나서 정기외 룰라로 가도 so So here, the first line, if due to having exhaustively abandoned the affliction, they are freed, and these afflictions refers to the manifest afflictions. They can be abandoned. So in the sense that they are suppressed by the path, by cultivating the path of the 16, such as impermanence. So, however, their seeds are not cannot be abandoned. So according to Prasangika Madhyamika system, so and then Prasangika they regard true grasping as afflictive obscuration. Chungama ina de tenzi ina tiang shitip de zigio wa ina tengyu elula ina dia de tenzi ina de nyum de zigio.
다 제가 어떤 시디 스 타는 거다. 시디 타는 거. 이게 신경 뜻이야. 그걸 어디 봐봐.
That's all. Yeah. So then this Prasangika Madhyamika, they regard or they take true grasping as afflictive obscuration. And having taken true grasping as afflictive obscurations, so by cultivating the path of the by merely cultivating the path of the 16, such as impermanence, the seeds of the true grasping cannot be abandoned. Not only does the seed of the true grasping cannot be abandoned, the manifest true grasping cannot be abandoned as well. Even the manifest true grasping cannot be abandoned. So this is the assertions of Prasangika.
어디 간다 가서 제대로 뭐 속에 와서 시디스 타니야마 니디들라 앞에 녀무지 디바데 녀무지 많이 디바들 녀무지 디바데 녀무지 많이 디바서 계속 드시고라 그 시디스 타니야마 다 제대로 와 녀무지 디바서 와서 제대로 뭐 속에 어디 봐 디바지 녀무지 디바서 와서 약간 단다 또 강사 자들 이제 중간에 뽑아 데이터 비세 받서라 녀무지 디바로 거를 녀무지 디바로 녀무지 많이 디바서나 대샤도 바샤로다 대시 바샤다 대왕의 중에 생긴 내기라서 내내레스 요아 대왕의 중에 생긴 내내레다 녀무지 샤도 바샤서라 다 녀무지 많이 디바서 타니 샤고라 마도 시디스는 타니 요 시고 시디스 타는 자냐 나지 바 이제 야로와 나지 버서야 시디다 유디스게 시고로와 뭐 제대로 도 되면 저기 야마 시디스 타는 시고.
So for Vaibhashika, they do not have the convention. They do not have the term cognitive affliction. So they do not have such conventions or terms of cognitive afflictions, but they do assert the afflicted obscuration and unafflicted obscurations. So, for example, the conception that apprehends persons as self-sufficient, as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, and then they regard this as the afflicted obscuration, and they regard those imprints deposited by this conception, and together with those mental negative tendencies, then they regard those as unafflicted obscuration. So for Vaibhashika, for Sautrantika, they do not have the conventions of cognitive. Sorry, they do not have the conventions of cognitive obscurations.
Oh, did you? That's not the young. Did you see what I am? Was a lady Nippon, a lady Nippon, that dilemma, what the top of the Jung Casino, Jung Casino touching you know, fishing door, and the Casino, the 녀무베지 되라라 뭔가지보다 바바 소리라서 방에 소지리 있으면 내진 게 그동안 지마 통구를 해서 간다 체리 그동안 열했으면 들라 좀 가시는 된데 무슨 거와 좀 가시나라 체리 그동안 요하라 누가 지는데 네 말이 했을 거다 체들라 누가 지야 도와 내진이 봐 등에 통해서 내진이 봐 통해서 체들라 등에 요하 되게 지시고 말했어 아주 좋은 거 된다 들어와 뭔가지보다 더 좀 가시라 나 수도 지오이티스 사비 내진이 봐 대왕에 더 좀 도움이 있나 구체적으로 동아지 봐 들이 요리해서 좀 가시나 내진이 봐 통고를 해서 들려자고 했어 나 단다 라는 들자요 말했어 와 좀 가시나 좀 되지 무슨 거 와. 인데도 이나 내 말이 단다 내진이 봐 통고를 해서 와도 쳔디고 등아 제바탄라 디시고야 말이 양세 심만 피비 레지니바 도무도스 양세 심만 피야 레지니바 마도 와선자 내가서 레지니바 통구리 했을 때 와, 되게 되시고 양세 심만 피야 레지니바데 도무도바 도 두고 말해서 오라다 간다 네게 뭐다 주도 공부 도지로와 양세 심만 피야 레지니바데 도 두고 뭐도스 내 도무도 와선자 레지니바 통어서 양세 심만 공부 배바시 레지니바데 열에 에세 열에 민다리 비본 다이 공부 회사인 봐 원래 민다리 비본이 단 통구리 열에 에세 와 대소가 빌려 잡으리 에세로 거를 마도 마서 다 뭔가 집보다 봐봐 소지라서 봐 챈디기 간다 뭐 소지 디스 레산에 챈들라 배 동안 동안 저래 디케샤 말이에스 좀 가지나다 너와 가지나 좀 소년들 거로와 너와 가지나 좀 소년들
레긴 유바 통세 대한테 제디 동행 용어
어디 빙아 배샤는 또나 뭔가 집보다 다 군가와서 봐더니 열다로와 다좀 토나
이네 챈들라
다좀 토사르데 챈들라 동안 동안 열다 디지 예르마 디시에 뭔가
and then we go to metro. And here it says, these passages must be explained in this manner. It shouldn't be taken as asserted by some commentaries and Tibetans on account of saying the issuing forth of suffering, the result of actions that were accumulated at the time of being ordinary beings previously in Mahayana, Ayam, Angulimala, and so forth. They did not become free immediately. This is not the potency which will generate suffering of this life. Rather, it indicates that since the ability to project future rebirths due to karma actions have not been overcome, they are not free. So the potencies of actions are seen in those. In relation to this line, then some commentaries and some commentaries or some texts, they comment they give the explanation by saying that they see the potencies of actions are seen, so it means that they experience the suffering in that present life. So however, the potencies of actions are seen in those doesn't merely refer to the generations of suffering in that present life or the issuing forth of suffering in that present life, but rather it refers to the potencies of actions that are able to project future rebirths have not been overcome. So since the ability to project future rebirths due to karma has not been overcome, so they are not free. So that this is what it means by the potencies of actions are seen in those. So meaning the potencies of actions that are able to project future rebirths have not yet been abandoned. So that's why it says the potencies of actions are seen in those. So the potencies of actions are seen, meaning that they are seen by way of scripture and reasoning.
다 된다 도도들이 내기 못아서 주로 고벨랑 대 도제 더 양시 심만 편비 니바 도 말이 니바데 모도와 송자 더 도와 저주면 되고 토요 말이세요.
양시 심만 내기 누가
양시 심만 편비 니바데 도 부고 편비 니바데 도요 말이 이 마도와 송자 더 도와 저주면 되고 토요 말 저주면 되고 토나데 도로 와 저주면 되고 토산데 도로 와 양시 심만 편비 니바 도로 와 어디 에 저주면 되고 토요 말이스 어디로
So to summarize this meaning, so by cultivating the path of the 16, such as impermanence, is not able to overcome the potencies of actions that projects a future rebirth. And since the potencies of actions that projects future rebirth have not been overcome, therefore one hasn't attained the state of Bodhisattva, or one hasn't attained the arhatship. So if one has attained the state of arhatship, then the potencies of actions that project future rebirth will be overcome.
군가원도 그 전주지 돈에 이게 냐와를 해봐. 예스. 전주.
공다 세디 동에 기바 점 말에 야나데 내기 누가 통사데 세디 동에 기바 말에
이때다 말에 되잖아 말에
점 말에
심할 잡아 나서는 봐 심이 내지 니바 통에 되자서와 시에서와 다데 체들라 동안도 니체 받던지 내지 니바 내려와 보자 디케션 말이스 내 많이 배셔는 가서 로지 동라고 저다 간다 군가원 있어요 와 이거 이 땅 앞에 누마 로지 로는 다 뒤 sama separate 지금 되나 그리 여러지 그러니까 전주 때문에 냐와라 배워 해서 전주 때 전주 요라다 코도 다좀 먹고 맞서서와 전주 때 냐와라 너네 간다로와 다 냐와라 너디 냐와라 만 전주 때 너디 다 무티비 템바 냐와라 지리 해서 무티비 템바 와 무티비 템바 냐와라 지리 다 냐와라 지리 다 무티비 템바 냐와라 지리 다 그거 통해 내 무티비 템바테 이게 다 동아 절라면 가르쳐 놓은 걸 쓰나 다 무티비 템바 되게 진주 로마 속에 답에 초대 샤야다 초밥 고도나 초밥이야 이 초밥 휴체 뭐래 저디 무티비 템바들 동안 나수 휴체 뭐 쉬었다 이게 나와라 다 무티비 템바들
공다데 초밥 대 양각 초밥 교과
초밥 고도 초대 샤야다 고도 저게 미세게 초밥이 쉬고 휴체 뭐 저디 다 무티비 템바 코나 나와라 초밥 휴체 뭐 같은 데는 코나 나수 돼서 휴체했다
두자대죠
오
두자대 초밥 표와 이나
그래서 제주요라 그래서 무티비 로마 코나 제주요라 제주도 속에다 무티비 템바 동산이야 고동도
통이체도
대체도 초밥 휴체 뭐 우리 초밥 같은 휴체 뭐나 템바 코로 데리나 수당 채우고 있어 수당 채우고 있어 다 거기 야 무티비 템바도 kun가올라 연구했어 다 내가 제주로 맞서 니 초대상 초밥 자체 뭐 맞을 수 있어 내 라로 치스 그 같은 초밥 자체 뭐 같이 날 수당 채우고 있어 이게 냐월 때 나수 휴체 못 당고 있어 니 맞을 수 있어 야 연구했어
어디 덤바디 라고
kungaolya len tang da kungaolya de jeli zalaji da zalaji laji da ko tsi tsingene pe chang du ja shi yong sen ne da tang de ne da tang pe ri go zama ja gu zi ne da tang da kungaolya da jo ma de ko na su shu tang da jo ma na su tang ya ro ko kungo da na su tang ro
kungawo de pashi
kungo da ko de
제주 된줄라 데
모티브 템바 len ko so se chang 전부 샤다 전부 지야다 데 choba들이 구도상 이 마제르시스 마제르치스 이게 이 나스탕 세게 앞에 그거 그 정한 두자시 올라서니 다 고조 그거 좀 전에 내내다다 동네 다 리고 그거 짜서 그거 리고 짜 그거 리고 짜다 그거 다 나스탕으로 다 나스 슈체 못 당고라 다좀 말해 데 차다 모성하게 동하게 여말다 차다 모성하게 동하게 여말다 당마 수도 찌워 있다면 레지 니바 대왕이 앞에 리고 짜 동네 리지네 파지 대체지 그거 동도 있어서 요와
응응이래 응사벨리 와기로
다 거들 특징 거를 뭐지 두세 진짜 처럼들 준주기 초도 저발에 내 내다 당디 저 준주띠네 판로 맞아네 가르진 내다 세네 되어였어 저 내다들이 땅 가르치는 세고 저 준주 킨다 간다 킨다 코란다 다좀 뭐 요러와 거슬이 저는 준주기 토바미 바리에서 가르치는 내다 세우였어 준주띠네 판로 맞아네 양칼이 가운데 거야 그랬어 그래서 큰 거게 준주띠야 파샤 니 준주띠야 세고트요 제가도 스테마스 그 템발에 쇼데 그 템발에 쇼데 아주 야 휴디 다 레지 뭐마 소소제디 레지 니비왕 그래서 레지 니비왕 다 등에는 뭐하면 준주띠야 준주띠야 게임하서 그 상호 게임하서 일러서 다 어디 어디 내가 다 등에는 오여라 등에 생각이 등에 다 오여라 근데 영화에서 다 소소 찍어도 다 레지사 대왕이 돼서 다 되게마다 등에 놓을세마다 맞아 그러니까 다좀 말에 차다 모서 대왕이 가서 등에 놓을세 기자를 말이다 알아 이 차다 모서하게 등에 놓아게 요 말고 차다 모서를 와
Yeah, so the potencies of actions are seen. So it doesn't refer to the issuing forth of suffering in that present life, but rather it refers to the potencies of actions that projects future rebirths and that have not been abandoned. So therefore, the potencies of actions are seen. So regarding this line, Ninkishla say that he would like to share a story. So this story I have Geshe-la said, I have read it some time ago, but I cannot remember fully. So the story the story is something like this. So Ananda, so I think it's Ananda. So Ananda is able to perform a miraculous power. He had a miraculous power. Then by miraculous power, then he went to hell, and then in hell, then he saw a, a teacher of non-Buddhist, a Titika teacher. So one Titika teacher was born in hell and experienced unbearable suffering. So Ananda saw these Titika teachers and then asked him, what is the reason that you are experiencing? What is the reason for you to experience this unbearable suffering? Then these Titika teachers said that my followers, so those my followers, then for my sake, then they make extensive offerings, and then they build my statue. They built a statue for me, and then they also built stupas and etc. For my sake, and then however many offerings they make for my sake, then to that much I'm experiencing suffering. So it means that his suffering is becomes greater due to the great offerings his followers made. So then that Titika teacher said to Ananda, please pass a message to my followers. Please stop making offerings because the more offerings you make, the more sufferings I have to endure or experience. Then Ananda passed a message to his followers, and those followers, they think that this Ananda must be a bad person. So said that whatever he said, then this Ananda must be a bad person. So they regard Ananda as a bad person, and then they caught Ananda and beat him, and then until they broke the bones of Ananda. So and then then 其實公教會那點樣？其實如果這樣你對你定有咯，你拿數啲當有咯，呀，因為你拿數真係啲差到懵鬆嘅忘記啲馬嚟，你定會沙別你嘅忘記咯，所以叫我呀。So and then so Ananda's those followers beat Ananda until they broke their bones, right? And then because of this breakage, then Ananda experienced a great pain. And then this experience of pain is not because of the power. It's not because of the power of the three poisons: attachment, hatred, and ignorance, but due to the power of karma accumulated by Ananda when he was an ordinary being. Because at that time, Ananda was already an arhat. So when arhat Ananda experienced the pain, and then those experience of pain was not due to the power of three poisons, but due to the karma accumulated by Ananda when he was an ordinary being. And then others, there were others arhats also, right? So then they said to Ananda, why you can perform miraculous power? Why didn't you run away by using your miraculous power? So then Ananda said, let alone performing miraculous power, I didn't even have the idea or didn't even have the thought to perform a miraculous power. I didn't even think of performing miraculous power, let alone performing it. So, so the experience of pain by Ananda in that incident, then is due to the power of karma accumulated by Ananda when he was an ordinary being.
Oh, that is. That's what kind of the age in the one told us that same thing to what you was on Shagama is that, and that is that. And then you do share the law. You share it. That didn't want to Mongaji for the Papa Sony, sending the man was a Luigi. You are the tiny little bit of Hamasadua, that is a shame to
你見到把通社啲即係啲中意幾把啲馬啲，你啲樣式起碼偏別偏嘅你見到把多馬多吧？
你嚟見把通嘅，你嚟見把多有馬啲，你馬多數得咗就問題不多有馬，係什麼？但嗰種嘅先，我們從我們做得咗問題不多曬咗嗰個話，就冇得自己冇得自己工作得嘅，得咗多得咗問題不多嘅嘢係啲嘅事喎話，但都冇多嘅錢先啲事，把搞喎話。
So the potencies of actions are seen in those. It doesn't refer to the issuing of suffering in that present life, but rather it refers to the potencies of actions that project future rebirths, and that potencies of actions are seen. So the potencies of actions are seen is because those potencies of actions have not yet been overcome, and this relates to the assertions of the previous side that by cultivating the path of 16, such as impermanence, one will attain the state of full destroyer.
지금만이도 다 company 되려고 한다. 그런 양자 되려고 다. 다 못다서 주도고 나고미 도와다주면 되고 도그리스. 도미 제가 리히자 말에 리히 내문은지 리히 방마자 말에스. 이 얘네 빵 차리스 가즈나 양시 심하게 니와네 해치게 세바서 가서 우리 때문에 나한테 시고요. 세바시고요. 세바데 랑테기 곰베 도저 못다서 주도 곰베 랑 곰베 도저 데 세바 빵사리스. 데 세바 빵바 사베 빵사리스. 데 사베 빵사와선다 아양지시마 레가 말이에요. 자네요. 양시마 레가.
세바데 빵사.
세바 빵사. 대치지 진실게 주로 레지 니바들 진실게 세바 주로 세바데 빵사리스. 세바데 빵사레 데이도 빵사리스. 데 빵사와선다 아양지시마 레가 말이에요. 양자 그런 거 되치려고. 와. 딜로 따들 레지 말이에요. 와.
So next outline is refuting the response. Refuting the response, and under this outline is the first two lines of verse 46. So the first two lines of verse 46 say, it is definitely said that it is not just temporary and there is no craving for appropriation. So the commentary says, it is so great exposition proponent or the previous side. They say, it is definitely said that the abandonment in those who have attained the state of full destroyer is not just temporary. So according to them, then they say that the abandonment in those who have attained the state of full destroyer is not just temporary, since craving is the cooperative condition for appropriating existence. So when we were talking about 12 links of dependent origination, then we talk one of the 12 links is called craving, right? And then according to them, then the craving, which is the cooperative condition for appropriating existence, then which is for appropriating a future existence, has been exhaustively abandoned. So therefore there are no seeds. So whereby one doesn't take a future above. So this is their assertions. So the response is in the next two lines of verse 46. They say, although the craving is not afflicted, just as for confusion, why would there not be the afflicted and the unafflicted?
제 다좀만데 가다 대지 세바데 number 해봐도 니무지 말이에스 와 대다좀바 대지 니무 그러니까 number 해봐도 니무 니무는 멜로 케고로와 그러니까 케고로와 다 number데 그모 말이발라 근데 말이발라 니무지 이바도 많이 봐 니신데고 예스와 닌데고 다지 히자이바 니무지다 니무지 많이 비바 닌데고 슬라사이바 닌데바긴도 세바라 양 number 해봐도 니무지 이바지다 많이 바지다 니 데고 그래 열에스 되노시 열에스 theories. You are that Kanda, Devaniga, teachable, Timoto Tabata, Yamuchi Maibe, Seba Yobati, Theobati, that Kanda Dachuma, they have Dachuma, Yamu, in Sepati Yori, so other. Another Kazaranga Tinji to Sepati, and Dazi to Kazaranga Tinji to Zimba date on the Seba Yata, date on the Seba.
Yamungi Seba,
yes, Seba Yosot. Nobody should Dachuma Deji, Seba Yoris, Seba Yos Karesna. Kazaranga tinji to Banzibi, Zimbi Tombi Seba, so you're yes. So by your money, start to buy your Mara, that you could Mobish Zaiba.
Kazar Rangi to Bazibe,
or Zimbi, Takanda, Toba Tate on Seba, Seba to Yuri, yes, Seba Yuri, yes, Loa. The Korang Seba and Muji, but my Niki Shivura, then Nashi, Kanda, Seba Killa, that Kazaranga tinji to Banzibi, Tate on the Seba Killa, Kazaranga to be Ziji. Zimba data Sebani, Sebani would what are the Sebani? That corner your ma, Dila Mess or the Nuji Mesa, the Kazan would sing you to Banzi, Topa data on the Seba, yes, Dotila, Dutchmus, Dutchmutilla.
Rangi Tingi to be Zimbe, Toba data on the Seva, de Gula,
the your Mares or the Kazan to be Ziji to Banzi, Topa on the Seba Yola, or they mess the mess what it is. 다 열에서 가르치는 열에서 가르치는 강사랑이 진지 두 번째비 또봐 데이터 세번 열에서 그 얘기라 이 여기 진짜까지는 강사랑이 진지 두 번째비 또봐 데이터 세번 속에 년보 제공도 말아 그러면 요 말아 년보 캐리고 말아 데이 년보다 돈이 공부가 강사게 다음에 처음 공부로 와 그래서 강사 다음에 처음 차고요만 다른 아집바 며칠인데 강사 다음에 처음 치는 차고요만 강사 다음에 처음 치는 말에 가나 뭐 탄지고 놀라 상호 다음에 처음 차고요만 그런지 다음에 처음 일로 오러와. 그런지 다음에 처음 일로 오거든. 나가서 강사 다음에 처음 차고요. 차고요. 와 근데 강사랑게 진지 두 번째비 또바 데이터에 세버서 뽕발라 도발라 그 강사랑게 진지 뭐두고 좀 받고 공부해. 와 대마 공부한테 방통이요 말.
장규바이나 대한 동이 다음에 참모디 공유요 말와.
고도고
공투요.
가지고 칠시야. 다음에 처음 안지 벌써 강사 다음에 그런지 다음에 처음 내가 가지고 치는 말에 강사를 처음 말해.
당연히 요리 당 녀몽 그래서 대양 세바이나 대양 녀몽제 님바 당 녀몽제 마인바니가 요리 녀몽제 님바 대에 대 요마레스 공주 대 큐자 자좀바 되비 강사기 교라 매바데 녀몽제기 세바데르베
다 그러게 그냥 말이 빨라 녀몽제 마인바 니스 되고 와 Dende Panashi, Dende Panashi, this Sepala, Neo, Esla, Tangedan. The Sepal Teva Neo, that Sepal need Karashavisana, Azaranja to be Ziji to Toba date on the Sebaji.
This Sebatea and Yomonjingi,
Sebatua, they call nobody should be Muji Sebatua. But they want to wear a thing with the part of yes. But Kazaranga Tinji to Banzi, Toba date on the Sebat, they point your money, they know just I want to be yes, that they your yes about. 니 열에서 ninja
강사랑기 세이 주베 진베 도바당 대장베 세바세 대니 요몽제 마임베 세바로
랑 진저라
랑기 세이 아니
다른 게 마임베 세바스나 크라시에 가서 단주와서 너무지 마임베 세바 누구 말이데 단주와데 니 열에서 다니 열에서 강사랑자도 제지 두 번째 도바당베 세바지 강사랑게
대 요몽제기 세바로
다 코로나 너무지래네 너무지래
요몽제기 세바
그래서 종합은 너무 정적으로 와.
당 강사 대장이
생기 진지 좀 집이 또바 대장이 세바지로 와. 대 강사 이번 기부다 좀 주나 열에 해서.
대 요몽제 마인베 세바로. 어디게셔요? 맞아.
자주는 너무 재미로.
그 다주마 되베 강사 대교라 요레스.
세바 요서 내서 니도와. 내 말에 문제도 내서 강사랑자들 제일 좀 지금 또바 대장이 세바네. 네, 요 말에 전화들이 있는 거. 요 말에스. 요 말이나 가자 랑게 생기 두반지 또바 대장 세바디 열에스 어다 열에스 다 저나게 니 텔 세바들 니 샤고래 가르스나 저나게 꾸모 마리발라 니 샤고도 와스 니 마리발라 마리발라 니무지 많이 바니스 도구도 대나시 세바라 대나시 열에스 니 여발라 지초도 년지 여 마르디나 지 열에 년지 열에서 아데 뭐 쳐봤다 너도 된다.
So the response given by middle way proponent says, although this craving in the continuum of the person whom you asserted to be a foe destroyer is unafflicted in the way it has been explained in the Abhidhamma, just as ignorance is asserted to be of two types, afflicted and unafflicted, why would there also not be a craving that is afflicted and one that is not, in the way it has been explained in the Abhidhamma? This must be asserted. So although this craving in the continuum of the person whom you asserted, so you refers to the great exposition proponent or the previous side. So according to them, then craving so craving in the continuum of the person whom great exposition proponent asserted to be a foe destroyer is unafflicted in the way it has been explained in the Abhidhamma. So those previous side, they assert that craving doesn't exist in the continuum of the person whom they asserted to be a foe destroyer. And then middle way proponents say to the previous side, so just like ignorance is asserted to be of two types, ignorance can be of two types. So one is afflicted and another one is unafflicted. So it's true that the unafflicted craving doesn't exist in the continuum of the person. However, the other one does exist. The other type of craving does exist in the continuum of the person. So the unafflicted craving that doesn't exist in the continuum of the person whom the previous side asserted to be a foe destroyer refers to the craving induced by the conception that apprehends person as being self-sufficient, substantially existent. So this craving induced by the conception that apprehends person as being self-sufficient, substantially existent, doesn't exist in the continuum of the person whom the previous side asserted to be a foe destroyer. However, the other type of craving does exist in the continuum does exist in the continuum of the person whom they asserted to be a foe destroyer, and that is the craving induced by the conception that apprehends a person as being exists by way of its own character, by way of its own character or by way of its own characteristics. So the craving induced by the conception that apprehends persons as being existent by way of its own character, this craving does exist in the continuum of the person whom the previous side asserted to be a foe destroyer. So the reason why this craving exists in the continuum of the foe destroyer that they asserted is because they are not because they have not cultivated the antidotes. They have not cultivated the antidote to such craving. So so the reason why they are unable to cultivate the antidote is because they are unable to meditate on the subtle selflessness.
Oh, that is a sepa judgment sini nemuchi miya kumoji de chede mese tadi tendana wodwa je kanda tanjuare jedamare nemuchi sepa la nemuchi yigore nemuchi mai sepa niga kene ma tanjuwa me jedama samaki sepa yinshila nemuchi yigore jedama kene gore tanjuwa de kana wa tanjuwa ge kanda nemuchi mai bi sepa tawani de yoma jedama konazo de kare konazo be nemuchi mai bi sepa kene yoma 지발
니 댕겨 단 지담아 니가 근데 걔는 요 요모제 많이 봐 세바
지발 지장
요 말이스
다 단지하게 내무지 많이 세바지 여바 꽤 처먹이 단지와 단지와 내무지 많이 세바지 여러서 봐이나 다 단지하게 예 너무 강가 유린되고 유린되고 선사 다 너무 강가 유린되고 선사 denzi kanga nedi dewa sunza tape nemuji mayibi sepa chiyoba ina ta nedi mayibi sepa chiyona ta hidi mayige nedi mayige de sepa chiyologa chabu tanjo nedi mayi hidi mayi logi sepa chiyologa chabu nemuji mayibi sepa chiyoba ina tanjo ila wa tanjo ila nemuji mayibi sepa chiyona ta nedi mayige hidi mayige panja chiyologa chabu sepa chi ta diyo marwa diyo mare tanjo kaza 치 단지 강사 단지 강가다 뉴딩이 나와요. 뉴딩이
뉴몬 강가 덴진 강가
뉴몬 강가 덴지 강가 뉴딩이 나와요. 뉴딩이 나와서 다 뉴무지 많이 비세바지요. 그래서 단지나 이거만 요나 좀 가려 요거도서 요나 다좀 정보래서 다 뉴무지 많이 비세바지요. 바이나 다 시딘 전도사요 말이야. 시디서도 나도 봐샤 얘는 기차 리치자 마도와 시디서 리치마도 해바치는 요마 딘지 뭐지 해바치는 요마 딘지 히디인게 해바인게 좀 요마 단주일라 해바인게 히디인게 지자원이 요마스 단주일라 단주일라 요마스
양 뉴딥 당 시딥 마임바 니가 마임바 방자지 요레스 데이트 차례로
네무지 마임비 세바지 요바이나 단주일라 네무지 마임비 세바지 요바이나 아니디 마임 시디 마임지 요
마이나 시디 마이 이 방자지 요레스
방자지 방자 가자 디바지 요고 시레스 다 디바디 네디 마임게 시디 마임게 디바지 요 다데 자원이 요마 와세
So Prasangika and Vaibhashika, they both assert that they both assert that craving is necessarily afflicted. They both assert that craving is necessarily afflicted, and they both assert that there is no such craving that are unafflicted. So, according to Prasangika, if there is craving that are unafflicted, so in other words, if there is unafflicted craving, then it seems all afflictions are afflictive obscurations, and even the true grasping is afflictive obscurations as well. Then it will result in the consequence that there is objects of abandonment that is neither afflictive obscuration nor cognitive obscurations. So because for Prasangika, Madhyamika, so there is no such thing as a common locus of Kaza. There is no such thing that are being both consciousness and also cognitive obscurations. So for Prasangika, Madhyamika, there is no such thing that is both consciousness and also a cognitive obscuration. There is no such thing for Prasangika.
다들 원만동이다. 소위 진지 세바이 소화되다 나야요. 미파탄이 집이세 가실에 님바지 다 간다 골파 나자 편주 오마벌 팔로 거 송아들어 팔려야래. 다들 맞대는 맞지 싶어.
And the response continues. Verse 47 says, due to the conditions of feeling, there is craving. Feelings exist even in them. A mind that is together with observation abides in some.
여기 나서 다좀바기라데 요마레스와 그런 number십 그런 다좀바기라 대진이 걸 생기생기 세버스 요마 관사레스 라고와 다디 요르 파 시고 다 돈이 마도베 간사 대달라 다 전화게 다좀바디야게 돈이 마도베 간사 다좀바 대달라 소와 진지지 마리바 중세자 꽝요 마레스 다바 오마 그러네 중세자 꽝요 마레스 마리바와 소위 진지 소와 대화라 먼저와 세바 용화라 잔디지 세바 리치와 요레스 다 전화 대야게 다좀 맞을 열세고 와 전대 가자 다좀 받이라 다 든지 세바 열세고 아우마 발로와 오니 마더니 다좀 맞잖아 내가 다좀 받이라 다 초와 딘지 머리바 중제 잡아요 말이스 초와 딘지 와 초와 딘지 머리바 중제 잡아 봐 소자 다 초와 딘지 초와 레오리 가서 초와 대화지 레오와 초와 대화 레오리 될라 만다와 디 세바 지고스 와 초와 대화지 레오와 다 초와 대화 레오리 어따 되다 마다 쇼선 디 세바 될라 세바 지고스 다 초와 동아지 레오와 초와 동아지 레오리 어따 되다 더는 세바 지고스 초와 동아 다 세바 지고스 디 세바 열레스 열이 진짜다 여기 진짜 가서나 초와랑 게 진지 주바 힘마 대원 초와랑 게 진지 주만 진이 열어와 그러길래 초와랑 게 진지 주만 진바 열어와 어디 힘바 때 다좀바 저랑 내가 다좀바 딱지라 때 힘바디 열었어 열어와 초와랑 게 진지 주바 힘이었어 저 다좀은 대바 대달라 열었어 초와랑 게 진지 주만 진이 힘바디 저랑 다좀 대달라 열었어 이 요왔습니다 땅에 보다 demba 힘바 쏜다 그래서 demba 힘에 강사 대다게 줄라 땅 문제도 열었어 세바도 문제도 열었어
세바 문규
와 세바도 열었어 문제도 열었어 로 예, 다시 세바 문제 도 시그마스 세바 도 시어마 도 시그마가 도 무시브 가스나 그 돈이도 확실히고 말아 와 돈이 마다 어떻게 시리고 그러와 열었어 아빠 얘를 다 알게 와 고스나
세바 데 가서 대한 도토기 말이야
도요 말이스 다시 파송 다시 세바 지금
도미 투비 김전 대한 돈이 도요 말어 So, since those persons who have not realized emptiness do not abandon even slightly the ignorance that apprehends feelings as truly existent, due to the conditions of feeling, there is definitely productions of the craving not to be separated from happiness feeling, and the craving that desires to be separated from suffering. So, since those persons who have not realized emptiness do not abandon even slightly the ignorance that apprehends feelings of truly existent, so it refers to the full destroyer that the previous side asserted. So it refers to the persons that the previous side asserted to be a full destroyer in whose continuum craving doesn't exist, because craving, which is the cooperative conditions of craving, has been abandoned, right? So here we mentioned that, so in their assertion, they say that the craving, the cooperative conditions for appropriating existence has been exhaustively abandoned. Then here, the response given by the middle way say that those persons that they asserted to be full destroyer, then since they have not realized emptiness, they do not abandon even slightly the ignorance that apprehends feelings as truly existent. So in other words, those persons who have not realized emptiness, they haven't abandoned the craving, the cooperative conditions for appropriating existence. So therefore, this paragraph says that this person that they asserted to be full destroyer do have craving. The reason why they do have craving is because they have not abandoned even slightly the ignorance that apprehends feelings as truly existent. So due to the conditions of feeling, so there is definitely productions of the craving not to be separated from happiness feelings. So when happiness feelings arises, then there is a craving that doesn't wish to be separated from this happiness feeling. And the craving that desires to be separated from suffering. And when suffering feeling arises or miserable feelings arises, then there is such a craving arises that desires a separation from such suffering. So it's because the adherence to feelings as existing by way of their own character exist in those whom you assert to be full destroyers. Yeah. So why do they have this craving is because the adherence to feelings as existing by way of their own character exists in them. So they do have this adherence to feelings as existing by way of their own character. So therefore, they have not abandoned the craving, because when happiness feelings arises, craving that wish not to be separated from these happiness feelings will arise. And then when suffering, miserable feeling arises, then there is a type of craving that desires to be separated from these kinds from miserable suffering. So because of this adherence to feelings as existing by way of their own character. So to prove that what they say that the craving, the cooperative conditions for appropriating existence has been abandoned. So in fact, it's not true. So because they still have this adherence to feelings as existing by way of their own character. So a mind that is together with the observations of things as truly existent abides manifestly in the continua of some persons. As long as that is the case, it is impossible to avert even the manifest craving that is induced by it. So they do have this manifest craving, and those persons that they asserted to be full destroyer have not abandoned craving, because they have not realized emptiness. Demero. Soa kosum. Number jeba gyuro. Kundu jeba. De jela doya. Jesu doya ro. So here in this paragraph, it says that craving induced by feelings, so the happiness feeling, which is the craving that desires not to be separated from the happiness feeling. And then in relation to suffering feeling, then craving arises, and that kind of craving is the craving that desires to be separated from the miserable suffering. So the reason why do we say that craving are induced by feelings is because the persons have not yet realized have not yet realized feelings as lacking true existence. So because the person have not yet realized feelings as being non-true existent or as lacking true existence. In other words, those persons have not yet realized the three spheres of feelings as non-inherent existence. So two ways of saying this. So the reason why craving induces by these feelings, because craving arises is because they have not yet realized feelings as lacking true existence. In other words, they have not yet realized the three spheres of feeling as being non-inherent existence. So due to which, and they have not due to which the craving arises. So there are two types of craving here. So craving in relation to happiness feeling and craving in relation to suffering feeling. So one is a wish not to be separated, and another one is in relation to suffering feeling. Then the craving is wishing to be separated from the suffering feeling. So these two types of craving will arise due to apprehending feeling as being truly existent. So because they have not yet realized feelings as being lacking true existence, right? So therefore they apprehend feelings as being truly existent, and therefore these two types of craving will arise. And this is supported by a sutra. So from a sutra it says, from a sutra it says attachment. Attachment comes after the happiness feeling. Anger comes after the miserable feeling or suffering feeling, and ignorance or confusion comes after the feeling of equanimity. The equal feeling. Equal feeling. So I repeat the words from sutra. From a sutra, it says attachment comes after the happiness feeling. Anger comes after the suffering feeling, and ignorance or confusion comes after the neutral feeling. Yeah, the equal feeling or neutral feeling is better. Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing. Because sepa the mabo share the good. Sepa share that go back to the sepa the share the GC, CC sepa so share the good.
Sepa so.
The share, the share on the share, under the the share GC.
Aoji ka saji.
GC roa. GC, CC, CP sepa. Sepa so share.
CP sepa sa rata saki fitasi. CP sepa.
CC roa. The GC, CC so share. Roa. 다 세바소 당어서 세바데서 배 또 관자 또지 차도 가지나 먼저 레진이 빠틀어 쓰는데 레지 징기 또지 세바 차도 그러와 세바 차도 다 세바데 차도 와서다 다 세바데 대소 다 가는 대세세와다 다 다시 보도 싶어라지 대세세와다 내려 간다 이 용어라 이유동어라 문다와 세바 대세세와 유용어라 문다와 세바 다 이치인바 이 용어라 문다와 세바들라 대세세 지세스나 이도 모아라 자완데 세바 이 취바 이도 모아라 자완데 세바 이도 이 모아라 자완데 세바 이런 지세 로아 다 시세스 와데 데 치세 풍보라 세바 다 세바 누시 된 세우라 치세 만 치세 풍보라 세바 조로아 풍보라 세바 어 데디 세바데 시세스 로아 시바 야자 시바라 지와네 이다 세바 누시 차고 세바데 맞은 치즈 풍부를 차대로와 치즈 풍부를 차대 시시시 어때 세바데 송나는 다 세바 본자 송 두신다고 지 시시에 됐어 시시 대가스나 맞아 배 제가 그냥 가장 풍부를 하장 세바 현차 지금 요바이는 양자 되게人家们花了几啊黑几星期学习我的这学习了我的理解是세바 대송但我是你个是세바学习我的话세바写的多了我的맞어 내기 비 진행의 조직에서 공유해봐도 네 방법에서 다 되게 시행을 했어.
지세 간데 교회 나서도 예제 지세 니바데
지세 간데 가서지 지에 들어라
야 지바데 So when we talk about craving, craving is of three types. So there are three types of craving. So the first one is a craving, craving of desirable. And the second one is craving in relation to fearful. And the third one is a craving of existence. So there are three types of craving. The first one is a craving of desirable, and the second one is a craving in relation to fearful, and the third one is craving of existence. So these three types of existence, among these three types of craving, then there is one is the main one to be abandoned. In other words, that is the worst one among these three types of craving. So first, we talk about the craving of desirable. So craving of desirable basically is similar to the craving in relation to happiness feeling. So it is a craving that desires not to be separated from a beautiful object or from attractive object. So this is the first types of craving that desire not to be separated from a beautiful or attractive object. And the second one, the second craving is craving in relation to fearful. So it's similar to the suffering feeling. So craving that desires to be separated from unattractive object or not or ugly object. So craving that desires to be separated from unattractive or ugly objects. And the third one, craving of existence. So craving of existence is a craving that crave for aggregates. Craving that craves aggregates at the time of death. Craving that craves aggregate at the time of death. So this craving, so it attached to the aggregates at the time of death. So if one were to generate very strong attachment towards one's aggregate at the time of death, then it will become a condition for one to be reborn in samsara again. So therefore, among these three types of craving, the worst or the main one to be abandoned is the third one. So the craving that craves aggregates at the time of death. And also from the treasury of knowledge, he also says that by the power of feeling, there are three types of bondages. So there are three types of bondages by the power of feelings. So it refers so the three bondages refers to there are three types of bondages because there are three types of feelings. So then we come to verse 48, then is under the outlines of, thus it indicates that even those who desire mere liberation must meditate on emptiness. I repeat, thus it indicates that even those who desire mere liberation must meditate on emptiness. Under this outline is verse 48. It says, having ceased in a mind that is separated from emptiness, they will be produced once again, as in the case of the absorption without discrimination. Therefore, one should meditate on emptiness.
가르쳐보이나 엄마니 보고 그래 했어와 나도 얼마 가서다 풍부한 게 진짜 좀 봐. 진짜 좀 봐. 자원다 돈이 또 가서 잘하는 거 같은데 들어와 예 저희 세나 내문에 좋아하는 신가봐 이나야 진짜 나야 너도 좋아 여러 힘이 놓는 게 뭐나 시리에서 되게 지켜서라 들어와 난 대신에 놓는다 냠바샤바나 시리에서 가서 돈반이다 잘해도 돈이다 잡아이나 나 다시 냠바니 해봐도 저 정박이 내가 같이 간다 냠바니 집에 내문에 좋아 뽕바자레스 뽕바자레데 이나 달라야 사베 마방수다 나야 나 내문에 좋으레스 들어와 나야 제가 요레스 tapi sabi de jaba pana la chia yo marwa yande la chia yo re pena de himi be nonju la ni bikala ta chwa de hira ba chuni yo mas e kas to de himi nonju ro de ni bikaso ta chondra ba ngo de chia yo mare de nonju la de ja ro ma sha de ja ro
chwa dang du ro chwa dang du shi
chondra ba wa chwa de hira ba de chune ngo de chia yo mare ta nonju le chalang di de ya zung ngo chu ro sa 저 가는데 뭐 수정을 했어. 내가 나시리스 다좀 전화가 내가 다좀 받들어와. 돈만이다 다 이나. 어디다 간다. 이 간다디 뭐지다 힘면에 양자 수고 줘야 이랬어. 이거 들어와. 이거 줘야 이랬어. 아무 되죠.
Verse 48, it says, although it is recognized that manifest afflictions can be seized temporarily in the mind that is separated from the realizations of persons and aggregates as being empty of being established by way of their own character, but they will be produced once again manifestly, as in the case of one abiding in the absorption without discrimination. Yeah. So therefore, definitely assert that those who desire to attain not only omniscience, but even the mere result of full destroyer should meditate on the emptiness that refutes the subtle objects of negation. So if one desires to attain the result of full destroyer, and not only that, and if anyone wish to attain the result of stream enterer or once returner or non-returner or the result of full destroyer, so then one should meditate on emptiness. And then here it says, as in the case, so it's just as one abides in the absorption without discrimination, and here it refers to these meditative absorptions that is separated from emptiness. So in these meditative absorptions without discrimination, or the meditative absorptions of non-discrimination, or meditative absorptions of perceptionness, then in these meditative absorption, so there is no coarse feeling and there is no coarse discrimination. There is no coarse, coarse feeling and coarse discrimination do not manifest in the state of meditative absorptions without discrimination. Coarse feeling and coarse discrimination do not manifest. Yeah. So, however, when one arises from this meditative absorption, and then these feelings and discrimination, then they will manifest again. So the reason why they will manifest again, or why they will be produced again, is because their seeds have not yet been abandoned. So because their seeds have not yet been abandoned, therefore these manifest afflictions, then these afflictions will manifest again, will be produced again. So if one has already abandoned their seeds, then these afflictions will not be produced again. So therefore, in the continuums of those persons whom the previous side asserted to be full destroyer, so these feelings and discrimination, they will arise again, but they will be produced, or they will manifest again, because their seeds have not yet been abandoned.
도도시는 내기 못해서 넘버니 시비 랑테 본데 거지. 대간다 영우 라야 쳇지 시그레 제그레 도투고 말에 다 돈이 고바이나 다 라야 도투고 말에 스텝 돈이 보내때 다 세버서 판 차이jel라 다라 도시기 말에 세 요시기 말에서 다 와 저아니 세 요시기 말에서 다 nomba 시비 넘서 되게 못 스트리트서 공부해야 원저리 희담면에 야자 측정도 와 측지야 요레스 뭐다도 제가 친다 다다 나도도 됐다 되는 얘가 잡아서 다시 로마도 같이 다 몸을 써서
Yep, so therefore one has to meditate on emptiness. So by meditating on emptiness, it will craving will be abandoned, and when craving is abandoned, then this craving will not. It is impossible for craving to produce or arise again. And however, by cultivating the path of the 16, such as impermanence, even though the manifest afflictions are temporarily do not manifest temporarily, and however they will arise again.
다들 얼마디다 다 간다 나가도 되는 데 가대 상지 송되는 티치 페이지 최적의 너다 손대 미네 지어서 다 간다 티치 거두이 내려와 티치 거두와
티치 거두
내려와 다데 데마 디디셔에서
Next verse is verse 49, and this verse talks about establishing a Mahayana as the words of the Buddha. And verse 49 says, if any speech engaging the sutra sets is asserted to have been spoken by the Buddha, why do you not assert that regarding most of the Mahayana, since they are similar to your sutras?
labaso tembe wa da andui denege sujin laba ndodi denege tingan laba sher nubi denege sher laba tem laba da tem labaso temba da mangawa endi sonje da kanda ro khana ge kasne dugo ro kasne ni jinse de ton kasne shawde da chano ge ni jinse de son ton ni jeja ge ton jeji ge ton ni kala shawyo 다 간다 된디게 다 티치지 안도데 페치가 참아라 벨라바서 대하로 땡우여리스 대대비 주제지 대상지가 제시 갈전 되고면서 티치진도 되나 대하로 땡우리스 라바서 땡들와 치 담아단도와 라바서 땡비 대상지 가면 되바 주제 가르레 에스네 다데파 그런서 가두지 법 같이 오르와
So in any case, their meaning is as follows. If any speech engaging the sutra sets, since the higher training in mind, so higher training in mind is in other words is higher training in meditative stabilization. So it's taught, illuminating the Vinaya since the higher training in ethics is taught, and not contradicting the Abhidhamma since the higher training in wisdom is taught, is asserted to be the speech of the Buddha. Why do you not assert that most of the Mahayana sutra sets are the words of the Buddha, since they teach the three trainings? So according to the previous side, then they establish their sutra sets as being the words of the Buddha. So from the perspective of the basis of expression. So the basis of expressions here refers to the sutra sets that indicates the higher training in meditative stabilization, and Vinaya indicates or teaches the higher training in ethics, and Abhidhamma or knowledge, it indicates or teaches the higher training in wisdom. So due to this reason, then they assert their sutra sets to be the speech of the Buddha. Then the Mahayana said, then why do you not assert that most of the Mahayana sutras are the words of the Buddha? So because since they teach the three trainings, so Mahayana sutras, they assert that Mahayana sutras are not the words of the Buddha, right? Then the Mahayana said to the previous side by saying, most of the Mahayana sutras, they teach the three trainings as well. Then why do you not assert them to be the words of the Buddha?
아주월에 가대 마도 찌기 하자와 가대 마도 찌기는 단지 찌다 찌기는 너도 찌기 단지는 여유 선발 찌마 인세 그런 거 찌리야 마도 디디션다
Next verse is, If due to not being realized, all become faulty, then due to one sutra being similar, why were not all spoken by the victor? If you assert that due to one sutra not being realized as fulfilling the characteristics of being words of the Buddha perceived by you, and all Mahayana sutra sets are faulty, then why do you not assert that due to seeing one Mahayana sutra that fulfills the characteristics of being words of the Buddha asserted by you, since it is similar in characteristics to what you assert as sutra sets, then all Mahayana sutra sets were spoken by the victor? So yeah. So then, Geshe-la said that this paragraph then you explain the meaning of the verse, so you can understand this through the explanation. Then the objection says that if the extensive mother, the 100,000 stanza Perfection of Wisdom Sutra and the like are the words of the Buddha, then it would be reasonable that Mahakashyapa and the others understood their subject matter, but they did not. Hence, they are not the words of the Buddha. So their objection is if the extensive mother and the like are the words of the Buddha, then it would be reasonable that Mahakashyapa and the others understood their subject matter, but they did not. So hence they are not the words of the Buddha. So then verse 51 says, Mahakashyapa and the others did not manage to fathom that speech, who would consider them as not to be held due to your not realizing it. So in response to their objection, he says, who would consider them as not to be held as the words of the Buddha due to your taking as the reason that Mahakashyapa and the others did not realize the very profound which is asserted to be difficult to fathom. Such consideration is inappropriate. So this reason that you provide or that you assert that Mahayana sutras are not the words of the Buddha is not a valid reason. So just because Mahakashyapa and the others did not realize it, it doesn't mean that it is not to be held as the words of the Buddha. Next outline is establishing that the path realizing emptiness is the path for attaining non-abiding nirvana. So this outline says that in order to attain a non-abiding nirvana, one must rely on the path realizing emptiness. And under this outline is verse 52. He says, the accomplishment of dwelling in cyclic existence, free from the extremes of attachment and fear, for the welfare of those suffering out of confusion, is the result of emptiness.
点不目的，等可可以甚至动啊，就那就点到，但是说教那的，是教那的那些通过了点把差不往给，那人家可以，但当他了什么意思？啊，比他了嘛，但可了差不点把差不可了，当他了嘛，对吧？那年上那他那些，年上那可以等啊进去呢，是把教啊钱上你两点些，钱得多，但我是那就年上的钱得了多，是吧？钱得多的时候，是吧？但我是两基本是当他了东西，年上是钱得多的时候，看到是吧？当他弄，我说我们谈就用了些的，他看他当他那个同学的看到，然后就把他年上是吧？当他的钱得同学。
哦，你让一个他腻了，他腻了，
但你让这钱他了，
腻了，
钱他了懂是吧？我说学啊，你让是把那可以等啊，还讲可以等啊，几乎了呗，也还讲几把几张，懂吗？点上去呀，照样上去，点上去主要给他把套上上，点上去嘛多，点上去嘛多，咱们那边两的也要嘛的，生活要嘛是吧？那学基本你行的，学基本等起来生活方式这些是吧？我得钱他懂啊，他刚才他那个来多的。啊，当他听到你个来做的，他详细跑跑东西，是吧？他详细跑跑的民间网的，但可你个的，可了嘛，接着民间网的，是吧？民间网可你个，这可你把的，那东西都变成不也是详细的，是吧？东西都变成不，那东把你的找呢，但可是可了，你的呢，更可以多让这把弄的是，啊，东西找的那条了，让这把弄懂啊，这钱到了东西的是吧？钱到了东西也是，我在这些谈的。
The achievement of non-abiding nirvana. So the non-abiding nirvana also refers to the state of enlightenment. So the achievement of non-abiding nirvana is definitely contingent upon the realizations of emptiness. The Aya Bodhisattva's accomplishment of dwelling in cyclic existence through the force of compassion, free from both the extremes of falling into the extremes of permanence of cyclic existence, circling through the force of karma and afflictions out of attachment to the aggregates as truly existent, as in the case of ordinary beings. So, like these ordinary beings, then due to attachment to the aggregates as truly existent, then circle in samsara due to the force of karma and afflictions. Then these ordinary beings fall into the extremes of permanence or fall into the extremes of eternalism. And the second is falling into the extremes of annihilation, in which one acts to attain the nirvana that arises from severing merely rebirth in cyclic existence out of fear of the suffering of cyclic existence, as in the case of hearers and solitary realizers. So, hearers and solitary realizers, due to the fear of the sufferings of cyclic existence, then they wish to attain, that they wish to attain separation from samsaric suffering. They wish to be free from this samsaric suffering, and they do not have any intention to attain a non-abiding nirvana. And because of this, then they fall into the extremes of annihilation. So then, for the welfare of suffering sentient beings who are for the welfare of suffering sentient beings who are circling in cyclic existence out of confusion regarding the person and the aggregates as truly existent is the result of realizing happiness. So these phrases link to the Aya Bodhisattva's accomplishments of dwelling in cyclic existence through the force of compassion, free from both of these extremes. Then, for the welfare of sentient beings who are circling in cyclic existence out of confusion, then this is the result of realizing emptiness. So bodhisattvas out of compassion, free from two extremes, then work for the welfare of sentient beings, then is the result of realizing emptiness. Or if one is separated from the realizations of emptiness, then although one is abiding in cyclic existence, when one experiences the sufferings of cyclic existence as existing in and of itself. So another translation for these can be fully qualified. So if one is separated from the realizations of emptiness, then although one is abiding in cyclic existence, when one experiences fully qualified samsaric suffering and become disillusioned, then one will fall into the extremes of annihilation.
到底按照他的嘛，公具体上他的了不了的些，主要的那些东西，我的把当把子，在东北民学了，甚至办的天嘛，你是 Dina Tesson Sawa, Umbanina Kumbashasi, the Shiro.
So next outline is advice that it is hence appropriate for those seeking liberation to meditate on emptiness. So what is mentioned under this outline is quite similar to what has been explained. So the verse is verse 53. It says, in that way, it is not correct to repudiate the positions of emptiness. Therefore, one should meditate on emptiness without harboring any doubt. Therefore, in the case of what was earlier explained, it is not correct to repudiate the side of emptiness. So it's not correct for those hearers' school to repudiate the side of emptiness, because the reasoning that will be explained below will also damage that. So those hearers' school, they repudiate this. They repudiate the side of emptiness. So meaning they accept the self of phenomena, and they assert that those Mahayana Sutra sets are not the words of the Buddha, and they also assert that those sutras that teaches emptiness are faulty. So they regard those sutras that teaches emptiness as faulty. So it is not correct for the hearer school to do any of these three that just mentioned. So assert the self of phenomena, and there is no need to realize emptiness. And Mahayana Sutra says are not the words of the Buddha, and those sutra that teaches emptiness are faulty. So it is not correct for them to repudiate that. So, and because the reasoning that will be explained below will also damage that. So many reasoning will be explained later. So therefore, without entertaining any doubts, even those who wish to attain enlightenment of the hearers and solitary realizers should meditate on emptiness. Yeah. And for the apprehensions of true existence is the afflicted ignorance that is the root of secular existence, and without repudiating its adhered object, the attainment of liberation is impossible. So, apprehensions of true existence, in other words, is a true grasping. So, the apprehensions of true existence is the root of samsara, and without repudiating its adhered object, so adhered object of the true grasping or the apprehensions of true existence, then one will not be able to attain liberation. So if one wish to abandon samsara, if one wish to be free from samsara, if one wish to attain liberation or arahaship, then one must repudiating the adhered object, repudiating the adhered object of the apprehensions of true existence. In other words, one must realize the non-existence of the one must realize the adhered object of apprehensions of true existence as being non-existent. And this non-existence of the adhered object of true grasping is the emptiness. And verse 54 says, the antidote to the darkness of the afflictive obscurations and obscurations to knowledge is emptiness. Why do those who wish for omniscience quickly not meditate on that? And so the antidote to the darkness of the afflictive obscurations and obscurations to knowledge. So obscuration to knowledge, in other words, is cognitive obscuration. So the antidote to these two obscurations, together with their imprints, together with their seeds, is the wisdom realizing emptiness. We stop here. We conclude with dedication. We dedicate these roots of virtue to the flourishing of Buddha Dharma and to the excellent happiness of all sentient beings. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to all upholders of Buddha Dharma, illustrated by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to live eons long and to have excellent health. May all their enlightened activities and holy wishes be accomplished immediately. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to our beloved teacher, Gyaltsen Lama Zopa Rinpoche. May the unmistaken reincarnations of Rinpoche be swiftly returned and continue to turn the wheel of Dharma for the sake of sentient beings. And we also dedicate and we also dedicate these roots of virtue to world peace. May excellent happiness prevail throughout the world. May wars, conflicts, disaster, natural disaster, pandemic, and others be pacified immediately.
Gondom Pewa, Tony Nijesun, Juvela, Jesus, the Kanjit, Chana, Primotive Zinga, so on the Zoshin, the Libro, and the Pende Maduva, and the Joy Summation, Kaditsu Metinga, so on the Zoshin, Tamete Bajas, and Tobosa, Jawaya, Secu Bajet, Kayu Malubet, the Mumba to Bekele, Yoso to Terim Boche, to Benson Jimpewala, Nayami, the Conchajan, Sumetin, Lamaso, the Pende Madu, Kayedina Majanto,
Thank you, Kishila. Good night.
Sorry, I will recite Trisara Machi's swift return prayer.
Oh, appreciate.
La kyu tun ju ni me ni jawa kung kyu jen ju kwa jawa che ju shan che la so ba yep se kyu ba che le shin gi lo san tenpa sin la da me be ko sa tu je ko cha yi yap je ring lo chu da pe le gen su me chi zun la ma so wa de me ge jo we ju zu gi sun be kyu kyu ra be kyu ba ni du ja me la la ba zi le ni gon de tu le tu ko ji mi che ba zu Jiden jidang shase wa jawa ni be tenpa rinpo chi shida drupe kolo yum so be chudu ni je wambu la chu so jangyu nama ni gi ni de be yu she pe de chadu gombo da chu je jawa la so dan den zu sungyo chile ye wa me ba we ko we shingang de pe na de wa ma lu chung we ne chi re so wa de je kya so ye sha pe si de pa do ten ju ji